Please let us know if the sound fails. My name is Sue Ellen Shea, and I work here at UCT. And I have the great pleasure of introducing Judy Fabish, who will be our speaker for this session. Those of us who had the privilege to watch the movie yesterday, My Dear Children, will really know that Judy needs now no introduction after you've seen the film. But for those of you who weren't able to see it, and it's fine if you didn't, Judy has a long history of involvement in lots of different places, and I would say probably the vein that runs through her work is really one of fighting for social justice. She's been involved in NGOs, she's been involved in the trade union movement, worked in a number of different capacities in the government prior to 1994 and since 1994. And then more recently involved in institutional planning at the university level, including TVETs and higher education. And where I got to know Judy was when she was the director of institutional planning here at UCT. But as she says, that role is not really directly relevant to what she's the journey that she's taking us through today. So the way we're going to do this is Judy's going to take us through a few slides and thoughts, and then we're going to open it up for further discussion. So Judy.
Can everybody hear me? Yes. I'm going to sit, if you don't mind. I have quite a sore back today. Would you like me to sit in the middle? Is that better? Yeah. Okay, let me just sit here so I can also see that. So, first of all, thank you very much for coming. I greatly appreciate it. I'd like to just get an indication before we start of how many of you didn't see the film yesterday.
It was rerun today. No, just rerun today.
Was it?
No, that's the opera. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, they're different. Okay, you might not make a lot of sense of the reflection then. Did you see the Ochberg film? Okay, so you may be able to connect some dots, but feel free to ask any questions if things really don't make sense. The other thing that I thought I would just try and find out, somebody just told me that she was also an Ochberg descendant. Would you like to put your hand up?
Yeah, yes, thank you.
Okay. Is there anybody else who's also, oh, it's you, sorry. Yes. Anybody else who's an Ochberg descendant?
My husband.
Your husband? Okay. So I'd like to invite you to participate in the discussion. From your perspective as well, if you feel reflecting on your own family backgrounds that you'd like to participate in the discussion, please feel free to do so. We'd welcome that. So let me first start with the qualifiers. I'm not an expert on heritage, and I'm not an expert on the pogroms. So when they asked me to speak, I did actually point out to them that I'm not an expert on either of those areas. All that I can really do is reflect on my own personal journey and what I've learned through the process. And it's in that spirit that I'm going to share some thoughts at the beginning, and then open it up for discussion and comments or questions. So just a little bit of background on how I embarked on this journey. I went out for supper, and I had supper with John Steinberg, who I'm sure many of you know is a very well-known author in South Africa. And we got talking. And I shared with him my long-standing dream of going to Ukraine at some point and trying to explore my father's roots. And he referred me to a book that had been written by somebody called Daniel Danielson. Some of you may have come across his name or his book called Lost. Daniel Mendelsohn works for the New York Times, and in this book, he was very fortunate. He started his journey a lot sooner than I did, and he actually managed to trace 9 people who actually came from the village where his own family had lived. They were dispersed all over the world. They were in their late 80s and early 90s. And even his quest was really to try and find out what happened to a particular branch of his family that he knew very little about. And in the course of his explorations, he was incredibly lucky. Those of you that may have tried to go on these personal journeys, is he went to the village a couple of times, and on one occasion they were about to, he and his guide were about to leave the village, and then they saw a fairly old man walking in the street and thought, well, why not just speak to him as well? And they did, and they discovered that his niece had actually married a Gentile Polish teacher. And when the Germans came, they hid this couple in a dungeon of a house. And this man was able to take Daniel Mendelsohn to the house, and he was able to actually see the dungeon where this couple had been hidden. And I read this story, and I mean, it had an incredibly powerful effect on me. But I also knew that given the nature of Ukraine, that I wouldn't find people who were still alive, who knew any members of my family or indeed any members from that generation. So my journey and the quest of my journey, if you like, was quite different from that of Daniel Mendelssohn's. I wrote to him, and I tried to ask him if he would give me advice, and I never heard from him. And I waited, and then I thought, well, I'm not going to hear from him. Maybe I should try the guide. How do you get hold of a guide? Or how do you get hold of anybody in this day and age that you don't know? What do you do? You Facebook. So I went into Facebook and I tried to search for Daniel Mendelssohn's guide. And I didn't hear anything for a while, and then he responded to me, and I thought, okay, now it's going to happen. I'm actually going to do this. He's a genealogist, he lives in Lviv, and he's accompanied a number of people on these journeys, and he regards himself as an expert on the history of the Arab settlement, which is where my father grew up. So once that connection was established, it then became possible to think about going, because I knew that going without a guide was not going to be productive at all. And I then decided to write to members of my family to see if anybody wanted to come with, and excuse me, none of them could. They were all busy, and none of them could come. But I have a cousin in Washington who is the grandchild of my father's sister, who also came to South Africa, who you all heard about yesterday. And he heads, this is relevant for the story, you'll understand why. He heads the Lung Institute in Washington, and he happens to be a very close friend of the woman who actually made this film. And her husband developed a very rare form of cancer. And the night before he was due to start his treatment, he had a stroke. And my cousin took over the treatment of her husband, and he survived, and he's fine. But in a way, I think Leanne, who was the director for this film, really wanted to do something for the family. And she had read the version of this little book, which my mother had produced based on the letter which my grandmother had written to her children. And she had always thought about the possibility of doing a film based on that story. So when it emerged that I was planning to go, she asked if she could bring a film crew and follow us. So I then set out to make a film. She followed us and ended up making the film. And as I said yesterday, the film took about 5 years to make. And that's largely because of the challenges and difficulties of accessing information on this period. And as she met more and more experts, she became more aware of people working in this field in different parts of the world. And she got more involved herself in history and also in the family intricacies. And so it took quite a long time to make the film. Obviously, also funding was a big constraint. So for all of us who were involved in the project, it was a 5-year journey from the time that I arrived in Warsaw and then went on to Ukraine, and then to the launch in Washington 5 years later in 2018. So really some thoughts. As I said, it started out as a very personal journey. I was very close to my father, and as I said in the film, it was very much a way of wanting to connect with him, but also having grown up knowing about this place called Wadno, which we had thought was very near Warsaw. That's what he remembered. It transpired that it wasn't the case. That I just wanted to try and see what the place looked like and just get a better understanding of where he came from. But this soon evolved into a desire to really help record and share this personal history. So when Leanne started making the film, for her what interested her, and I think many people who've seen the film has interested them, is really Fager's choice. How did she choose these two children? How come they got to come to South Africa? What happened to the others? And we all know, just watching that extract from Sophie's choice, it's heart-wrenching. And so for many people, and for Leanne herself, that was an entry point into this, was to try and understand what makes a mother give up her children. But very soon, I think it became for her a project about raising awareness of the context within which the pogroms took place. That gave rise to the choices that she ultimately made. And I think also trying to cover the film in a way that surfaces a number of universal questions or issues. But more than anything else, to really highlight the importance of history. Many people have also said that what has struck them about the film, which they hadn't really thought of before, is the fact that the pogroms probably laid the foundation for the Holocaust. That you can't actually understand the Holocaust if you don't know enough or anything about the pogroms, because many of the people, as the film shows, who were involved from Ukraine in the pogroms, subsequently were very active in perpetrating the goals of the Holocaust, which really highlights the fact that it's important to understand history, because history helps explain many of the subsequent phenomena. Also, obviously, at a personal level, having read this letter a long time ago, and since then I've read it many times, and each time I read it, it's a real struggle to actually engage with what she says and what she went through So I think for me it was also an attempt to really understand this grandmother better, whom I have never met before. I'm going to read a couple of extracts from the book every now and again. The first extract I'm going to read is really an extract that's written by one of the experts who was interviewed in the film, Nathan Weir, who, when Leanne updated the little booklet, it used to be white and now it's blue, because Nathan Weir actually supplemented the original book with an introduction. And one of the things that he says about fate, well, let me just read this. He says, as was the case with so many Jewish families, the Seamuses fled their home in order to escape the threat of violence. Later, after returning to Vatva, they were forced to leave again, this time expelled by Russian troops, as were tens of thousands of Jews suspected of colluding with the enemy. Here we begin to see Fega as we've not seen her before, forthright, daring, even heroic. She stands up to the landlord who wants to evict her family from their shelter in Kremenetz, and she pushes her way to meet with the prosecutor in Dubno, and she insists that her husband's body be removed from the Kiev hospital in a timely fashion. Unquote, and then before the later she says to her children, one has to know how to speak to important people, Fega tells us, and clearly she did. So, whilst we hear stories of the persecution, the violence, the brutality, there are many accounts in this book which also illustrate the agency of others, trying to resist, trying to survive, and trying to escape some of the evils of that period. So for me, the film is very much also a tribute to my grandmother and others who struggled to survive, and also to the many thousands who lost their lives. The next point I want to touch on is the particular responsibilities of Jewish people. There were many times in Ukraine where I was struck by parallels, if you like, between what's going on in Israel-Palestine at the moment in relation to the eviction of people from their land, the forced removal of people from their property, killings, violence, and there are many manifestations that I can talk about later. I know that's controversial, but there are many of us who believe that the history of persecution of Jewish people has really explained why in many struggles all over the world, and these experts have endorsed that, there's often a preponderance of Jewish people who are involved in struggles for freedom, struggles for human rights, and so on. And it's because, in my view, and my travels reinforce the fact that, I don't know how it is possible, that's me talking, I don't know how it's possible to engage with this kind of legacy and not want to ensure that this never happens anywhere in the world to anybody. One of the amazing things about the film, and that's quite a big jump from that point to the next one, was the reconnection with other members of the family. So we would have heard that there were 12 children. 2 of the oldest were sent to America and left 14 and 15. And they all kept in touch with the one who ended up in Palestine and was subsequently joined by the mother. And so my father was able to meet them when he was 15. When I was in America, I was an American Field Service student, and I met my aunt. And then sadly, we lost contact. And through this film, it's been possible to reconnect with that part of the family, which has been quite amazing. And we also discovered that actually there was a third copy of the letter. We thought there were only two. And this letter was also sent to my aunt in America. Similarly, my sister has a daughter who lives in Israel, and again, through the film, she reconnected with the children of the sibling that emigrated to Palestine. So there's been a nice personal dimension to this story. Whoops. And carry on with the reflection. I think I've spoken about the importance of history. I think one of the things that many of the experts alluded to was this period was an incredibly messy period. There was a complete and total collapse of many governments. The state was not functioning at all. And it was a period where a piece of land was literally being fought over by many people who, again, as was shown in the film, would change their insignia from one week to the next. And all of the experts themselves had different interpretations of some of the driving factors behind the pogroms. For some, it was a clear-cut case of anti-Semitism, and as the one person said, effort to wipe out Jews, to perpetrate genocide. And for others, it was really more of a case of saying, you know, that period was messy. People had been forced off the land as a result of the assassination of the Tsar. People were starving. There were people wandering around the countryside with absolutely no food, who had been the neighbors of Jewish people. There were Jewish people who supported the Bolsheviks. There were Jewish people who fought against the Bolsheviks. The people who tried to control different parts of the Pale settlement represented. It might be Russia, it might be Poland, it might be France, it might be Austria, but that was changing all the time. And one of the experts from Stanford kept saying, you can't impose a narrative from a later period that explains a later period of history for an earlier period, particularly in this case, because it was an extremely messy period. And then actually, it was a period that even normalized violence, it normalized bestiality, because there had been a complete collapse of any governance. And yet, later on, sorry, try not to move it. I'm trying not to move it. Okay, so one has to be, as one of them said, you've got to be careful about grand narratives that are developed later on to try and explain events retrospectively. But nevertheless, in periods like that, you really see they are fertile ground for othering of people in various forms. And there may be economic reasons, and there may be other reasons for that othering. There may be political reasons, and in this case, many of them suggested that there's a confluence of economic, political, and ideological, and indeed pure prejudice, and acting against Jews on the basis of being Jewish. But contexts are important to understand othering. Okay, so moving from that, I think the other big universal theme, which is not a theme that I had really thought a great deal of, excuse me, before I went, was this issue of trauma and the profound effects of trauma. So, the film, for example, indicates that my father couldn't read the letter, nor could his sister. The film also indicates that he was in Egypt in the Second World War, and he had planned to spend 1 week with his real mother in Palestine. And when he got there, they couldn't communicate. He had forgotten Polish. His Yiddish was very poor, and she obviously couldn't speak English, and his Hebrew was very poor, and so they couldn't actually communicate with each other. And all that she could do was look at him. And they hadn't seen each other for 20 years, and this woman sat next to him. And he describes this sort of sense of just finding this whole situation completely impossible to relate to. Well, not impossible, but extremely difficult to relate to. She was his mother, but actually she wasn't his mother, because his mother was the woman who adopted him and brought him up and loved him and cared for him. And this woman, he thought, had given him up. And so many factors. And obviously, deep down, he was recalling many things from his past. He left the next morning, and he simply could not stand to be there. And I think many people who've reflected on that, there are parallels in many other parts of the world. If you've experienced very deep levels of oppression and trauma and violence, persecution, it's often extremely difficult to talk about how it's affected you. But nevertheless, it has affected you, and it's affected you in very profound ways. And in his case, he just simply could not talk about it. He chose to channel how he reacted to it in a particular way. But I think many people have suggested that looking at this film, it really highlights the importance of talking about the past. Because we want to move on, and part of moving on is still, that was the past, I don't want to go there, I can't go there. But actually often to move on, even in this country, to move on requires a recognition and an affirmation for how that past has affected people in very, very deep and emotional ways, in ways in which people often can't talk about, and find it very hard to go there and may need support for that. And the intergenerational effects of trauma, because those things, they don't go. They leave a mark. They leave a particular destiny in how your parents react to those kinds of situations. Obviously informs the way in which they bring up their children, their values, and intergenerational trauma, and how people will react to it continues. Hence the danger of not dealing with violent, and tell me not to move this, but I have to. Danger of not dealing with violent and oppressive legacies. The thing that personally I think I probably found the most difficult, and I don't know if any of you might have picked it up in the film, was the issue of rape and violence against women. And I've reread parts of the book, and I can certainly see references to how she talks about various things, and then she stops. She doesn't talk about what happens. She sounds very, very badly tortured, but she doesn't actually say what happened to her. I couldn't go there. I could go to some places, I couldn't go to the fact that she might have been raped and that her children might have been raped and that her aunt, who I knew, might have been raped. Because as you go through all of those little pieces of paper and you see the numbers of people, women and children, who were raped, and we know, look across the world, look in Rwanda, look in Sudan, look in Syria, rape or violence against women continues to be a weapon of war. So that's a very important thing. Another issue that I think this film highlights, and it's also quite a topical one, is the issue of migrants. So when Ochberg got permission to bring these orphans to South Africa, as the film said, he wanted to bring 1,000, but he only got permission to bring 200. And in the end, subsequently, when Ochberg tried to bring more in, he was denied permission. On the grounds, initially they were allowed in because they were white, but they were Jewish. And so they weren't quite white, they were white Dutch Afrikaners. And so there was also a real resistance to bring them in, because how would you classify them? Would they fit in? Would they be absorbed into the white population? Well, look at the rest of the world. Today, we see the same thing. Certain immigrants are allowed in, and others aren't. Look at South Africa. We have very different kind of treatment in South Africa for immigrants that come from Europe or from certain parts of America compared with many parts of Africa. And so how we also deal with movement of people and so on is another issue. So I would like to suggest that there are many parallels between these kinds of issues in the film and other situations still today. Then the next, and this is the last slide before I open it up. Oh, that's it. Okay. Somebody asked me yesterday how she got to my grandmother, how she got to Palestine. So I'll read you one little extract from that. She talks about, sometimes I did not have the will to live. I thought of suicide, but fortunately people looked after me. And I decided to write to you about my life because I want you to know how I suffered. I hope, dear children, that you would all be happy and that one day I would see you again. And then she says, Tzilla, who was the sibling that went to Palestine, wrote from Givat Chaim, which is the kibbutz where she lived, saying that she wanted me to come to Palestine. She'd been there for 3 years and had finally managed to obtain a certificate for me to enter the country. I had no husband to support me, so I needed money to support myself. And I also needed money for traveling. I worked at a school camp where I looked after 300 children, and then at another camp where I had an unpleasant experience. Full stop. She doesn't say what that unpleasant experience was. Then she says the doctor arrived there and said he had heard that the place was dirty. I took him round and showed him all the floors, and he saw that everything was clean. I suspected that he was trying to frighten me and that he wanted a bribe. I did not give him one, but I gave him a good lunch with plenty of wine and sent him on his way. When I left there, I had enough money for the tickets to Palestine, and I was proud that I had earned it through my own labour. I went to Lvov, took out a passport and paid for it. And on a Tuesday, I took the train which connected with the boat which left on Wednesday. We all wanted to reach the destination as soon as possible. Many people were sick on the boat, but I felt well. Okay, I'll stop there. So those are some introductory remarks and open.
Sorry, when was that?
Pardon?
When did you go to Palestine?
She doesn't actually give the year. So,
I think it was like in the 30s or?
yeah, no, it was in the 30s.
Sorry, I'm a bit inquisitive. The daughter who settled in Palestine, was she one of the, remember in the film she had left the last 4 children of which she gave up 2 for adoption. Now the 2 that were left, is this daughter that went to Palestine maybe one of those
No,
2?
no, because the 2 that were left died in the Holocaust.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she had got married, and she and her husband managed to get a passport to Palestine. Okay?
Is that book available?
Not at the moment. This is the only copy I have. But I'm hoping that she'll send me some copies. There is a copy in the Gitlin Library at the Holocaust Centre, and there's a copy of the film in the Gitlin Centre, in the Holocaust Centre. Sorry.
Sorry?
How did your dad find his mother? How did that come about?
Yeah. The sister that ended up in Palestine corresponded with Isaac Ochberg, and through Isaac Ochberg connected with the children. And there's some stories, yeah, where apparently the children sent her some money. And she was very worried because she didn't know where these children had managed to get money from. And they were told that they had done well at school, and so they got some money. So it was via Isaac Ochberg. But the letters got less and less frequent, but they maintained contact with the sister who was in Palestine. And she operated as the kind of connection point for the family.
The daughter in Palestine, did the mother relate to her all right? Was there a good relationship with her as opposed to when your father went there where there was nothing?
Yes, they lived in the same kibbutz, and they had a very good relationship. Sorry, the purple one. Sorry, the purple one.
Purple, noticing the purple. Judy, thanks so much for this amazing sharing. I felt very moved by it, and yesterday I had tea afterwards with a friend who's a pediatrician, and we were talking about, she and I have done work around children and trauma and things to do with resilience, and we were just saying, you know, when we look at our work here, you know, in the medical field, people live in communities where there's a lot of violence and trauma and distress. But what my friend was saying is the scale of this trauma for children living at that time is way off the scale of anything. Like, it makes what happens here almost like chicken feed. You know, so much worse. And so we were thinking about the effects on children, and particularly on your father and your aunt and maybe others. And just thinking about, you know, how people mitigate that trauma. So he came to South Africa and this notion of resilience and what builds it. And so I was thinking about this family that adopted your father, and what were they like, and who were they, and what was his life like after he was adopted, because that must have been a huge mitigating factor. And I'm sure he had his issues and his scars and his wounds, but from the little bit you said, he seems to be a functional person. And we know people being traumatized, often they can't hold our jobs, they can't have relationships, you know, their lives become very dysfunctional. And the sense I get from what you said is something helped him build his resilience.
Well, that's an interesting.
How old was he when he came to South Africa?
Sorry? He was 8. He was 8 and she was 10. Did you want to respond to the question?
Yes. So it's well documented in the medical literature, particularly.
Are you a psychologist or a
I'm a
psychiatrist?
pediatrician.
Pediatrician, okay.
So it's well documented in pediatric literature that there are a group of kids that we would describe as being super kids. You would have a family of 4 or 5 children, 4 of them would end up in jail, and the super kid ends up in college and doing well. What was it within that dynamic of the family that allowed one to succeed, whereas the others, the quote-unquote normalized kids within that community, didn't actually make it? And so there's a lot of stuff written about that, but in fact there's no real explanation why some would succeed and some, people have said it's mentors and, and so there have been mentoring programs to try and take kids out of it, but we find in our own community here, it doesn't really work. We put mentors in and it just doesn't seem to work. So there's clearly more to it than just that. Hence the title, Super Kids.
Well, just to respond to the specifics of the question, and then I'll come to you. So, my father was adopted by a very, very religious man who was completely illiterate. He was adopted because that family had 3 girls. And they wanted somebody to say Kiddush. If you're Jewish, saying Kiddush on Friday night is very important, and it has to be said by a boy. And so they actually adopted him so that they could have a boy who would ultimately be able to say Kiddush on a Friday night. He sold milk to the miners, and she made clothes. 2 years after they adopted him, they sent him back to the orphanage. Because the youngest of the 3 children was very jealous of him. She was quite a lot younger than the other 2. And so they took him back to the orphanage, and then a year later they came to fetch him again. And he then bonded with the family, and he became very, very close to that family. There was a son of one of their sisters, and really was like a brother to him. He was totally absorbed in that family, and he, to all intents and purposes, I mean, none of them even saw him as an adopted child. He was totally accepted into the family. Recently, I showed this film to a private gathering in London, many of my father's adopted family. And for them, I think they found it very hard because they did not connect to the fact that he wasn't part of their family. So, to answer your questions, partly that he then got a lot of love and affection and so on. And I don't know how many of you know Bernie Federoff. He's received a number of honorary doctorates. He was very involved in the Southern Project. Astronomer. His father, and this relates to the point about mentors, his father took my father under his wing, gave him things to read, encouraged him to learn, spoke to him, drew him into the struggle, miners' strike, and so on. So, yes, I think there was also, from an intellectual point of view, and somebody who really cared about what he was going to do and so on. That was also quite important. So you wanted to come in on that?
Is there any indication in the book as to what is the basis on which those 2 children were selected?
Yes. No, there isn't. My father, as the film said, always thought that he was chosen because he was naughty. The sister in Israel actually said that the mother did not choose. She said to Isaac Ochberg, I can't choose. And Isaac Ochberg chose. And he just chose those 2. Sorry.
I had the same question.
Okay.
This may be too personal, but was your father able to show normal love to his own children?
Yes. I mean, I personally was very, very close to my father. He certainly gave me a lot of love and support. And Rose, you heard what her daughter said. She said she was somebody who liked to give love and receive love. And for her, family was just the most important thing.
It's interesting because it's sometimes not that way.
Yeah.
Further to that, did your father speak to you about the history or his memories of what happened?
No.
Because many cases of unfortunate victims of Holocaust, they don't speak to their children about their experiences at all.
Well, remember, he was not a victim of the Holocaust.
Of
He was a victim of the pogroms. And that's the pogroms is the period that preceded the Holocaust. And no, he didn't talk about
Did you
it.
remember them?
He remembered three things. He said he remembered getting on the ship, and he remembered once running after a wagon and trying to get on a wagon, and he remembers falling out of a bed that he was sharing with his siblings.
During the pogrom. That happened
Yeah.
during the pogrom.
Yeah, that's all he remembers.
My father came to South Africa as a young man, and when we were growing up, if he started talking about his life in Poland, because he came from Homs in Poland, he always started to cry. And as children, we couldn't bear to see him cry, so we never asked these questions and we didn't get any more information.
You said he'd lost his Polish by the time he saw his mom, but I thought he was from the Ukraine.
Well, he was, but remember I said this was a very, very messy time.
Yeah.
So it was religion, so that it evolved.
Russia.
Yeah. He spoke Russian, and he also, for a time, that area was controlled by the Poles.
Yes.
So he did speak a bit of Polish. Yeah, he thought he grew up in Poland, and actually he didn't. Yeah. Yeah, back.
Out of all the children, two came to South Africa. So my first question is, one of the reasons have been because of their age. They were 8 and 10. Were they not in a group of children of all that age?
No, if you recall, did you see the film?
Yeah.
Okay, so the picture of the children showed that their ages ranged between about 3 and 13.
Okay.
My mother was 15. She was one of the nurses that we could take another small child. She spoke about it the whole time. I grew up knowing all the stories. But her sister, who was younger, and you see in the film, is a very sad little girl and was always withdrawn and sad. And of course, all the other orphans, she went to Arcadia, became my aunties and uncles. So I grew up having aunties and uncles who were Ochberg orphans.
Was she adopted?
Her sister was, by the Bloch family. My mother went to work, and Isaac Ochberg broke all the rules. My granny gave him the two girls because the husband was killed in the pogrom, his throat was slit in front of my granny, and the little boy died of typhus. So she begged Ochberg to take the children, and he did. And she, when they grew up a little bit here, they went to work, they saved money, and Mrs. Bloch went to meet her in the train in Cape Town. So her mother was actually reunited with the girls. Sure. So I grew up knowing my granny.
Sure. Would you like to say something? You're the one whose husband is. Would you like to comment?
My mother-in-law was Molly Cohen.
So I think you need to speak up a little bit because you don't have my mic.
My mother-in-law was Molly Cohen. There was a married man. She was Shapira as a young girl. Her sisters apparently, she thinks, died of typhus. They were older. She had two brothers. The one brother was helped by Isaac Ochberg to get to Europe and then to Israel. The older brother, they didn't know what had happened to him. He eventually landed up, they heard, in Germany and then in Israel. She never met the older brother. And the Isaac Ochberg, they called Daddy Ochberg. And they never wanted to be, there were a lot of children at Aranja where she was born. That's didn't want to be adopted. But she never spoke about, she never told us anything until the 50th anniversary of Ranger. And then the story started to come out.
How old was she then?
At that stage, well, we don't know when she arrived. She feels she was about 6. She can't remember the place that she came from.
Well, the trip was actually, they arrived in South Africa in September 1921. Yeah.
So she must have been about 50, 60 at that time.
Okay.
She died just about 3 years ago at the age of 100. Wonderful woman.
Thank you for sharing those stories. Looks like
What happened to Faye's husband? Your grandfather?
yeah, he had typhus,
Yes.
so he died in Kiev.
And so from what age was she responsible for all the children? I mean, from how old was she when he died? And she had to bring up the children.
Yeah, so I'd have to do the maths. I can't tell you offhand. But that was actually one of the reasons my aunt, Faye went off a couple of times to fight various other people's battles. There was a time when 10 people were arrested for selling sugar. And from Vadva, she went off to try and see if she could talk to the magistrate because her husband had a picture of the Tsar on his wall. And so she went off. And then when the husband got more and more ill, and she took him off to Kiev, she left the children on their own. And so my aunt apparently turned down offers of adoption because she just kept thinking, she'll come back. And so I don't want to be adopted, my mother will come back. But so I can't answer that question. I have to read the book and work it out because all the children were different ages. And
You met the aunt who went to the kibbutz.
yes.
Was she able to fill in very much and talk about how she got to Israel?
You know, at that stage I didn't really ask her any questions. Yeah, the question was if I met the aunt that went to Palestine, and yes, I did, and whether I was able to talk to her and get more answers from her about how she got there and her mother's journey and so on. You know, again, there was a language problem. My English was very bad, and she didn't speak any English. But I didn't actually ask those questions at that point. I had to get involved in my own journey of really trying to understand the history. So no, sadly, I didn't. I mean, my mother talked to her, and that's how she found out that her mother had not chosen either of the children to go, that Achberg had chosen them.
And another question, the footage in the film,
Yes,
is it all authentic? Because the arrival in South Africa was certainly not a film of South Africa of that day. So I'm wondering if the footage sort of simulates